The gods of Mount Olympus. Battles against giant scorpions, Medusa, and the Kraken. A half-man, half-god set out on the adventure of a lifetime. All this can only mean one thing. We're comparing Clash of the Titans on this episode of Retro vs. Remake. Okay, I'm Dan Bulick.
I'm Reggie Parker.
And welcome to another episode of
Retro vs. Remake.
The podcast where we discuss films and their remakes. So join us as we answer the question, should this remake exist? Today's episode is Clash of the Titans. So the original Clash of the Titans, made in 1981, starring Harry Hamlin, Laurence Olivier, Judy Bowker, Burgess Meredith, and Maggie Smith. Directed by Desmond Davis. Screenplay by Beverly Cross. It should be noted that he also wrote Jason and the Argonauts, a very similar style movie with the same Harryhausen special effects. So, little note there. Music by Lawrence Rosenthal. Clash of the Titans 2010, starring Sam Worthington, Liam Neeson, Gemma Atherton, Mads Mikkelsen, and Ralph Fiennes, and lots of more, and many minor roles that we probably will get into. Directed by Louis Leterrier, who you might know from the Transporters 1 and 2, and The Incredible Hulk, the Ed Norton one, the unspoken MCU movie. Screenplay by Travis Beacham, Philip Hay, and Matt Manfredi. Music by Ramin Djawadi, who you might recognize from Game of Thrones. And speaking of Game of Thrones, there's 4 Game of Thrones alums in here. They're the other actors that we might talk about later. Both of these movies are loose adaptations of Greek mythology. Okay, Reggie, what is your first experience with either film?
Yeah, my first experience is pretty much films like it, not necessarily the films that we saw. I've never seen Clash of the Titans. When we did pick Clash of Titans, for a moment I thought we were watching Immortals, and it was not Immortals at all. It was Clash of the Titans, so here we are.
Surprise, surprise. I actually had seen the remake of Clash of the Titans not when it came out, but I guess when it was available on Netflix DVD. I remember renting it. Don't remember watching it too much. I think it was one of those background movies while I did other stuff. Don't really remember too much about it, and I had never seen the original before until this. Alright, well there's a lot of differences here, even though it's the same source material pretty much. But before that, let's do a brief synopsis. It is the time of ancient Greek mythology, and King Acrisius has sentenced Danae and her son, Perseus, to death at sea. They are sentenced to death because Acrisius has angered that Perseus' father is the king of gods, Zeus. Acrisius is punished for his actions, and Danae's son Perseus survives and grows into adulthood. Meanwhile, Queen Cassiopeia declares her daughter Andromeda is more beautiful than any of the gods. This declaration angers the deities. The gods tell the people that Andromeda must be sacrificed in a certain number of days or be destroyed by the Kraken. Perseus sees this unfold and decides that he will kill the Kraken. Accompanied by guards and the aid of Zeus, Perseus travels to the Stygian witches to learn how to defeat the giant monster. As they travel, a deformed man named Calibus follows Perseus for revenge. He will be the reason Perseus and his men have to fight giant scorpions. Eventually, Perseus and his men reach the Stygian witches. After a small conflict, they reveal that the Gorgon Medusa can turn anyone who looks upon its eyes to stone, even the Kraken. Perseus and his men then travel to Medusa's lair to get her head. The battle against Medusa takes its toll, and almost wipes out all of Perseus' men. Perseus chops off Medusa's head by using the reflection in his shield to see the Gorgon. Afterwards, Calibus kills the remaining troops, but Perseus is able to defeat him. Perseus then hastily flies back to the Doomed City on Pegasus, as it is the day that the Kraken will attack. The people of the city have Andromeda tied up and ready to be sacrificed. It seems like she will be taken by the monster, but at the last minute, Perseus shows up, uses the Medusa head, and turns the Kraken into stone. Perseus is now a hero whose tale will be spread throughout the ages, and both movies end in their respected ways. Okay, a lot of similarities there. I was able to use all the names, pretty much, but there are a lot of major differences too. Where do you want to start?
You know, I know we talked about a little bit in the synopsis, but we should give a little bit of backdrop to the film. This is just one of your classic sword and sandals epics. There's a lot of movies like Clash of the Titans, but I guess the effects were probably a big part the film. Just wanted to throw that out there before diving in.
Yeah, I was surprised it was made in 1981. Like, I had seen Jason and the Argonauts, which I had mentioned when I was talking about the screenplay writer, and that came out in the 60s, so I thought this was also like a 60s movie, and it was like 1981. I was like, oh, they're still using those effects in 1981.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was a little surprised by how late this one was made.
Yeah, I'm assuming that part of this was kind of like an homage to those types of films. Like, I think they may have shot in this style to replicate that, or I don't know, any other excuse for what we were seeing.
Okay, so I think a good place to start maybe is Perseus himself, our hero. Okay, there's a lot of differences there, so I'll just start with, I guess, his mother, Danae. In the original, he's the daughter of King Acrisius, and in the remake, she's the wife of King Acrisius. I don't know if that really affects the story too much. I guess it does. We'll get into that when we talk about Calibus. So there's differences there. Also, big part is the motive of Perseus, why he takes on this journey. In the original, it's because of love. He sees the Princess Andromeda, and he falls in love with her immediately, and then he proceeds to have to save her not once but twice, once from Calibus and then once again from the Kraken. And then the remake, it's more of a revenge-driven plot, where Perseus' adopted family is murdered by the gods, and Perseus wants revenge. No! He screams into the heavens and cries no, which is not cliche at all.
It makes the films very different. One of my sort of key disappointments in the remake is because of his motivation, we get less cool swag, you know?
Yeah.
The original film, Perseus gets 3 different gifts, as they were, from the gods. He gets a talking shield, he gets a super cool sword, and a helmet that makes him invisible, and they do the footprint effect nonstop in that film.
Oh, they use that. They use it a lot.
Oh, yeah. For an epic film like that, you kind of want to see the epic gear. Like, it's part of the hero's journey. And in the remake, because he doesn't want any handouts from the gods, Zeus is his father in both films, but he really hates Zeus in the remake, for the most part. And he gets all this cool shit, and he's just like, nah, not going to use it. I hate you, Dad.
I'll do it on my own, Dad. I don't need your help.
Yeah. So you can take your magic sword and stuff it, which kind of, in that scenario, it kind of weakens Perseus for me in the remake, because he insists on doing everything as a man. You know, while that's honorable, it's really boring.
Yeah, I agree. You know, we have our actors, Sam Worthington playing him in the remake and Harry Hamlin in the original. Sam Worthington is just not a really captivating lead. He doesn't have a lot of charisma. He's just kind of brooding and upset, pissy the whole time. It's not really a fun guy to follow around, right? And Harry Hamlin's not necessarily, like, great. Like, he's kind of pompous, and I'm not necessarily drawn to that either. He's kind of like an arrogant ass, and he's just like, I'm doing everything, and I'll do it all right. But, like, it's more fun to follow that, I guess, than just this, well, I hate everybody, I hate the gods, you know, life sucks. Just, come on, man. Come on, like, have a little fun with this.
Yeah, I felt like Harry Hamlin, you know, at the beginning, he kind of looks like a doofus, to be honest. Like, he doesn't seem that capable, which also made me feel like it was an older film than it was. For like an 80s lead, he just didn't, I don't know, he didn't seem tough at all, really. But by the time his journey carried on, by then I was way more behind that version of Perseus, just because he was doing the epic things that, you know, we kind of come to expect from a hero. Sam Worthington, you're right. There's just something off about him. He's a really flat lead, and because of his motivation, there's like a line when the characters is like, oh, you keep getting my men killed with your arrogance. It feels like the deaths that are happening are avoidable if he would just embrace the fact that he's superhuman. But he just refuses to, and like people die along the way because he refuses to like make the effort. And I felt like it made him less heroic in my eyes than the Harry Hamlin version, which is, you know, very generic and goofy, but heroic.
That's a good point. I mean, he's definitely more heroic in the original because he's doing it, he's kind of doing it for love, right? He has to save this woman that he, it's kind of a weak, I saw her once and I fell in love with her immediately. It's a little weak, but you can buy that. It's okay, I get it. He needs to save her, save the city that she's from. And then the remake, it's completely selfish, revenge driven. I need to avenge my family, avenge. It's like all in his mind the whole time. It's not a heroic quality to have just be driven by revenge the whole time. By the end, it's hard to figure out exactly why he needs to save the city, because his motivations, he needs to just kill the gods. He wants to kill the god that killed his family. He doesn't need to save the city. He doesn't have any attachment to the city, unlike the original Perseus, whose future wife is like the princess there. It's definitely not as heroic.
That's a great point. Yeah, he in both situations, he's a stranger to that land. He's not really really from Argos, or you're right. Like, his motivation to save the city itself is not there. Like, there's no real reason for him to go back and stop the Kraken or really do anything other than to spite one of the gods.
But not even really like kill the god that killed his family. He's just gonna kill the monster that like kind of works for the god. It's not really. Yeah. He's not really getting his revenge even at the end. No. So his motive, he never reaches his goal. Unlike the original, who he is able to save not only the princess but everybody in the city. Yeah,
and by the end, because his allegiances, he doesn't like his dad for the most part, but he's helping him. Like it's weird. Like, why is he? I guess Hades is that bad of a guy that he wants to stop him, but that's really not well defined. You're right. It seems like the heroic actions are just there for the sake of being there, because the story falls off based on his motivation.
Yeah, it's like we were only doing this because they did it in the original. You don't get the reason why he feels like he needs to save the city. It's not. Yeah. It's not right in front of you, pretty much, I guess.
Yeah. At a certain point, you're kind of wondering why go through all the trouble of doing this in the first place. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I missed something, but it just felt like I didn't get Sam Worthington's motivation.
Another thing I didn't like, and this might be nitpicking, I just didn't like his look. Sam Worthington, he just had the shaved head, and it's like everybody else had like this elaborate like hair that was like weirdly braided, or this like trippy facial hair or something, but he had nothing. Clean shaved head. It's like he showed up and was just like, no, I don't want any makeup or any hair. I'm just going to do this and this will look good, right? Like, he doesn't look like he fits in with the time.
You're making a good point. I alluded to it earlier, but like, this is a sword and sandals adventure, and we've done thousands of them. This is around the time of 300, around the time we're making Troy. Actors in those movies are like growing out their facial hair or have like flowing locks, and like there's an epic quality to the look that's just missing here. He's, like you say, he's got this buzz cut. He's not even like the most interesting character to look at in the group he's in, you know?
He's like wearing a t-shirt sometimes. It's like, dude, do they have anything for this guy to wear?
To the point where there are other characters, one who have better motivation, that actually come off as more epic and heroic than our lead character, which is a problem.
I guess that's all I have to say about Perseus. So I don't particularly like either Perseus. There's definitely parts that irk me with both of them, but I have to give it to the original, just because his motivations make a little more sense, and I guess I just like his character a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's still pretty close, but you know, when it comes to getting the job done, of getting me as an audience behind you, yeah, the original does a much better job, so I'm giving the edge to the Henry Hamlin version. Yeah.
So we have the character of Calibus, who's actually not a Greek character, not of Greek origin. He's actually a Shakespeare character that was just brought in. So there's that.
Yeah, there is that.
In the original, he is I guess you could say, the ex-fiance of Andromeda, and he's the son of the goddess Thetis.
Yes.
But he is deformed by Zeus because he was killing too many of the winged horses. We'll just say he was killing all the Pegasus. I don't know. And so Zeus wanted to punish him, and then he became deformed and became evil. And then in the remake, Calibus is Perseus' father. So he was the husband of Danae. And he's mad because he was in a battle with the gods, and Zeus doesn't want to fight. So what does he do? He sneaks in, disguises himself as the king, and bangs the guy's wife, who's his enemy. Yep. I mean, that's cold-blooded, Zeus. Super
cold-blooded, and both films get into some of the many bad traits of the gods. But yeah, here's a clear example. Zeus just like egregiously pretending to be a guy, sleeping with his wife, and then creating a demigod out of that scenario, which really makes Acrisius he's pissed.
Yeah, and I guess rightfully so, but I don't know. But he didn't have to kill his wife for it, but he did it. He doesn't get transformed into a creature like he does in the original, but he gets struck by lightning, and that kind of just deforms his body. In the original, he kind of has like, I don't know, like a tribe or something, but he has like a clan. He's like on his own kind of throne that he sits on. And in the remake, he doesn't have any followers. He's just kind of a loner, just brooding, just like his son Perseus, just brooding. They both want revenge against Zeus and Perseus. Well, no. In the original, he doesn't want revenge against Zeus. He just wants revenge against Perseus. In the remake, he wants revenge against Zeus and Perseus.
But I mean, you know, in the original film, he doesn't really have a concept of Perseus until, you know, they interact in the swamp and Perseus, you know, stealing his secrets, more or less. We'll get more into that. Thetis is actually a little bit more of like the driving anger, like the person looking for revenge because she feels like Zeus's son is getting better treatment than her son, Calibus. Yeah, but I mean, you know, the revenge does come, but it's not like originally he's even really aware of Perseus, but no. by the end of it, they become true rivals.
Yeah, he learns about Perseus because it's kind of weird. I don't exactly understand what he's doing in the original, because he used to be engaged to Andromeda, but then he became ugly and deformed and she didn't want to marry him. Instead of kidnapping her, he would send this giant vulture with a cage and kidnap her spirit. It was weird, because there was a bunch of men trying to marry Andromeda because she is beautiful, but in order for them to marry her, they have to answer a riddle, and if they don't answer the riddle, then they get burned alive. And Calibus is the one feeding her these riddles night after night, but he has to bring her soul to his lair, give her the riddle, and then sends her soul back. I did not understand that. Why not just kidnap her?
Yeah, I don't know. I think what I do, I guess, like about that element, it is over the top, but it sort of embraces its mythological elements. It's completely arbitrary and pointless, but it is supernatural to have like a giant vulture pick up a cage with the spirit of somebody so that they dream up these riddles every night. It is loosely defined. I agree.
Yeah.
If you want that.
She kind of, it's sort of like a dream for her because she doesn't exactly memorize it, but she's able to memorize the riddles for the suitors. So while he's doing this, Perseus sneaks in with his invisibility helmet and he sees that she's being taken away. So he's able to go to Calibus's lair and cut off one of his hands, and he's able to solve the riddle and able to marry Andromeda. And that's when the revenge plot for Calibus starts.
That's when the revenge,
in the
because
original.
You know he's slighted by Perseus. He loses a hand. He's tricked. I as ridiculous and over the top as the whole dream thing or sequence is, it's very helpful for me in terms of the movie being an epic, as it were, because you have this challenge, which is the riddle, which I think is a very nice touch. It's ridiculous and long and stupid as the riddle is. At least there is one. Like, there's a challenge that's presented. There's a supernatural element to it. He has to use the tools of the gods to solve this, and he needs these tools to meet the villain, as it were. And I think that it's very helpful to have these types of challenges along the way in your journey that are actually built into the story, as opposed to just like stumbling upon random things. Like, I don't know, this is just another chance for Perseus to be heroic because he has to do something a little dangerous to get what he wants. And I think it's a nice touch there. Yeah,
because this isn't even like what the movie's entirely about. Like, this is sort of like an introduction to his heroism. So you get a little taste of it. He gets a little taste of it because he's never really done anything heroic in his life up to that point. He's been sort of living on that one island. And then this is the first time, you're right, that he's able to do something heroic. Albeit sort of a selfish thing because he's doing it because he wants a woman. So, but he's still heroic, fought the villain and was able to save her. So it was noble.
Mm-hmm. When I was watching this sequence because you, like you just said, it is an intro sort of to his heroism. You could kind of go full stop on a movie right there, you know, like
Yeah. Wait.
He got the girl, you know,
He got the girl. They got married, and I was like, "We're at the 1 hour mark. This could be it. This could be the end of the movie right here."
Yeah, and I'm sitting there. I was thinking the same thing. I checked the time on it because I was like, "Wow, that went quick." And I'm realizing there's like a whole another hour left in the movie. And I'm like, "Wow, where do they go from here?" And then everything just ramps up, which is a very nice touch. That you're thinking, okay, we've had a heroic arc right here, but then as soon as he gets what he's going after, the goal being Andromeda, he's presented with another even more ridiculous challenge, which is like in 30 days, the Kraken's coming for her, and you know, be ready because we're sacrificing Andromeda, because Andromeda's mother basically pissed off Thetis.
Yeah, I know we're getting a little off topic, but it is cool because you think a typical movie would end there, but instead they kind of they say no, it's not over. We actually got more stuff that he has to do. So I actually liked that in the original, that it didn't just do the typical, okay, they're all happily married and the end, lived happily ever after. They didn't get to live happily ever after. He had to do even more heroic things to be with her. So I thought that was pretty cool. But getting back to Calibus, that's kind of what he's doing. In the original, he wants this Andromeda, he can't get her, then he has to tell the answer to the riddle.
Yeah, by being able to eavesdrop, he's able to figure out Calibus's riddle. And I really do like that this scene for Calibus as well, because even though he is the bad guy, it sort of humanizes him as well. Mm-hmm. He does have like a Shakespearean type monologue that he goes on, and you can see that he's sad that Andromeda really doesn't want to be with him. So, well, you know, he's a bad guy, but there's a reason for his badness, and it gives him like a human element, even though he's become a monster. The character is much more fleshed out, in my opinion, in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to say this live. As over the top and ridiculous as it is, it works.
Yeah, I think he is more sympathetic, even though they did say in passing that, oh, he killed all these Pegasus. You never see it. So what you do see is, you know, this kind of broken down man who's all alone because of the way he looks, and that woman doesn't want to be with him, and he wants to be with her. So you do feel sympathy for him. In the remake, you don't really spend so much time with him. You do feel bad for him a little bit. You know, Zeus did come in and sleep with his wife. But then after that, you don't really get much time with the character. It's immediately thrown into that revenge plot. Once he's on that quest for revenge, his character doesn't really grow. You don't get anything from it.
The original Calibus is cursed, still holds some bit of his humanity. He's doing a bad thing with the whole riddles and burning people alive element, but like, you understand his motivation because he doesn't want anyone else to be with Andromeda, so he's concocted this kind of like screwed up plan to stop other people from marrying her. It's a cyclical thing. It's tragic. I think it works. And then in the remake, you're right. I don't know much more about him other than the original reason why he's pissed. It's kind of 50-50, but I think the remake does a better job of making him look very strong. Like he gets infused with powers from Hades. He's able to take out a bunch of dudes. It takes like magic swords to stop him. So he's a more imposing and scary figure, I guess, in the remake. Just being tough doesn't make you a good villain.
You just get so little from him that it's hard to kind of analyze him. I mean, he's there pretty much just for the action sequences, right? He's there just for the one sequence before the scorpions, and then he's there again after the Medusa head in the remake. He doesn't really do too much. Yeah,
he becomes less of a character, more of like a plot device, really. Something to be stopped, I guess. All right, he's in the way, we gotta get rid of him. He doesn't do much for the film, I don't think, in the remake. Yeah, I don't even feel there's much of a reason for him to be there in the remake, which is kind of surprising given how important he is to the original film.
Well, it might be one of those instances, again, where it's like, well, he was in the original, we have to have him in the remake. But yeah, I guess just because the original, you're with him more, you could feel more for his plight. I got to give it to the original again for the Calibus. Yeah.
I agree.
We sort of mentioned a couple of gods there talking about Calibus. They're very different gods. So let's get into that. So in the original, we have the god Thetis, and then in the remake, we have Hades. And both of these gods are sort of using Calibus for their own goals. Thetis is the mother of Calibus, and Hades just knows Calibus in the remake. Okay, so Thetis versus Hades. Which god do you like?
I like Thetis in the original, kind of along the lines of what you were saying, because she's got some skin in the game, as opposed to like Hades has his own sort of motivation, but Thetis, it's her son. You know, she feels like Zeus's son is getting all this preferential treatment, and her son's out there getting cursed. She thinks it's a pretty raw deal. And the actress Maggie Smith, you know, she does a very good job of being a villain. She delivers her lines very well. I like the scene where she's kind of like talking about trying to like one up Zeus. They're like kind of walking in Olympus, and she talks about turning into something else. Like, so he turns into a cuttlefish, and I turns into a shark. Like, you get some really fun scenes from her there. Where this remake, would you say? I don't know. Does it almost feel like Shakespearean to you? Doesn't it feel like a little over the top with the gods in this remake?
Yeah, it definitely feels way over the top. A little too on the nose, especially with the performance of Hades, I thought. It's like, you got Thetis in the original. She's supposedly the villain, but she played very subtly. You don't look at her right away and go, oh, that's a villain. You know, she doesn't look any different than the other gods. There's no ominous music that plays. She doesn't talk a weird way. But with the remake, you get all of that. You get Ralph Fiennes, like, hunched over, dressed in, like, dirty black clothes, just speaking really creepy. You look at him, you hear him talk in 1 second, you're like, yep, that's a villain. It's very on the nose. No subtlety at all.
I kind of like that the villain in the original isn't just like Hades. It's another god, and they're all kind of vying for their space. And in that movie, Zeus kind of comes off as more of a bully because he's kind of pushing everybody around, and she's just kind of pushing back a little bit. So her motivation makes sense with her son. Her motivation makes sense that, like, hey, I'm a god too. You can't just tell me what to do. Her interactions with the humans is a little bit more powerful because she gets mad directly when she feels like she's being slighted. So when they said Andromeda is more beautiful than any of the gods, she took that as a personal offense because it was happening in her own temple. It made that villain a lot more powerful, in my opinion, to see these different motivations throughout the film. Ralph Fiennes, I mean, he's doing it. You know, he's a villain. He's doing a really good job. And the movie, which I think kind of gets us into the weeds, the movie starts playing with the idea that Zeus is getting weaker because people aren't praying to him. Hades is getting stronger because people are afraid of him. So that dichotomy just fell a little flat for me.
Yeah, there's this subplot that Hades wants to overthrow Zeus because Zeus apparently tricked him when they were fighting the Titans, and I just felt that whole plot was unnecessary.
Yeah.
We should have just paid more attention to Perseus and just, you know, put a little more into that story. And instead, you got this whole subplot where Hades wants revenge, and it's like, again, you'll hear me say this a lot, but like the remake, there's a lot of revenge going on in the remake. You know, Perseus wants revenge. Now Hades wants revenge against Zeus. It's a subplot that isn't really explained fully. Like you had mentioned, like Hades is getting stronger, Zeus is getting weaker. They never really go into exactly how Hades is getting stronger. It's just told to you, Hades is getting stronger. Well, how? How is he getting stronger? They never explain it. And then even when Hades is defeated, he might grow stronger again. It's like, wow, how? I don't understand why you don't explain these things. If you're not explaining these things, don't talk about them. Yeah, it's
the idea that like fear itself is what makes him stronger. I don't know. Just especially with them being gods, it seems like they're really focused on like one area. It's like, is everybody everywhere not like praying to the gods anymore, or is it specifically this town, the city? It starts getting into that weird thing where you have to start thinking about stuff that like really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think it's just too much. Yeah, because like, okay, Hades is mad, so now he wants revenge and he has to overthrow him. Does he really need to? Because you have Thetis here. She's kind of pissed at Zeus. But she's not like, I need to overthrow him, you know? It's like, I know my role. I know where I am. I could push back a little bit, but I'm not going to just start this huge uprising here. There's Order of the Gods. But just getting back to Thetis, I think another thing the original does is, like, you feel more for her plight than you do for Hades because, yeah, it is her son. It's unfair how Zeus is treating her son because if it was Zeus's son, she even says this, if it was Perseus who did this, he wouldn't do this. He would let him live and thrive. But no, because it's my son, he has to be punished. So it's like, man, that is shitty of Zeus. I thought that was a nice quality of hers to have. That's like this kind of scorned mother. It's like, I want to protect my son. But then also like plays into Zeus well too. Like he is pretty petty when it comes down to it. This all-powerful god is very selfish in the end. But then you have Hades, who's like, just like, I just want revenge. And again, they don't really go into it too much. You just hear a little bit of it. And once you hear about the revenge, they don't try to give you any more. They don't try to get you on his side with like any sympathy, especially by making him look like and act like that. It's,
Yeah, I think that's a key point here, that this is not a sympathetic villain at all. This is just like an evil guy. Mm-hmm. And I find that when you do that in films and stuff like that, it's just, it falls flat more often than not, because you usually want some nuance and subtlety to your villains, for people to understand where they're coming from, even though they're bad guys. You want there to be sort of a tension with, how do I feel about my protagonist? How do I feel about the order of the universe? I will say this too, what I like about Maggie's Thetis is, in a movie where there is not a lot of opportunities for women to do much of anything in the film, she's holding her own. She's like one of the big time players in this film. And you sort of take that away from any of the characters in the remake. There's not really an overly strong female character. I guess it'd be
Io. Yeah.
I guess, but she doesn't have the same sort of sway that you get from Thetis. So I think it's actually really powerful villain portrayal to have this woman kind of going around and pushing back against the king of the gods. It's an interesting dynamic.
That's a good point. Again, I'm just going to have to give points to the original. You made a more sympathetic villain, a more subtle villain, one that's not obviously evil. You know, they say a villain or a bad guy doesn't know that they're bad, right? But I feel like the Ralph Fiennes is just too on the nose with that. Yeah, Maggie Smith's Thetis. Give her the points for that.
So, Zeus in the original is a dude that sometimes sits in front of blue lights. That's how you know it's important. There's like a halo of lights behind him.
I think he got it at Spencer's, man.
Yeah,
Spencer Gifts.
And he sits big. This is where the remake starts punching back, Dan. Shiny Liam Neeson. Let's talk about it.
With enough gloss and shine on him to make any J.J. Abrams movie bashful.
It's an insane amount of... I think the armor is made out of lens flare. I guess in both films you get a bit of this, but I do like that it feels almost more like a play when you're in these scenes, like with the Zeus and the gods talking. I like that it's over the top, maybe a little too over the top of the remake, like you said, with like the Ralph Fiennes character. I thought that was a fun element to it. I feel like Zeus is a jerk, but I think he's more of a dick in the original film.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I would agree with that. Yeah.
You know, he's like, oh, what is that? Your like favorite owl like ever? Is your all-seeing owl? Hey, give that to my son. It's like he might as well be like just eating like a sandwich or something while he's delivering these lines. Hey, and also you over there, do some other thing for my. He's so hateable. In my opinion, he's the villain of the film, but you know, because he's the boss, he can't be the villain.
Yeah, I would say he's more selfish, like I had said before. If you just go back to Thetis and Calibus, the way he treated Calibus, and even though Thetis is pleading, he's like, I don't care. He did this, he pissed me off, so he suffers. And then this guy he killed the woman that I loved, so he suffers. It's like, I do what I want. He's like, I don't care what you say. Zeus in the remake seems like he might listen.
There's an element where he doesn't want his son to die, and there's actually some scenes that sort of humanize Liam Neeson's Zeus. Like he's pleading with Perseus to become one of the gods. He really ultimately just wants him to be included because it is his offspring. Even though he's an all-powerful jerk, he has a kind of human motivation to him. Other guys, he still seems to have some sort of connection with humanity as he built him, and I think that's where a lot of his motivation is. Where the original film, he doesn't give a shit about anybody but himself.
No, he's very full of wrath and a vengeful Zeus in the original. And like you said, in the remake, he loves humans. He loves humanity. We had said that in that one battle against Cretius in the beginning, he wouldn't actually take part in that battle because he loved humanity so much. Him sleeping with Cretius' wife is sort of his non-violent way of intervening in that battle. He just loved the humans, but I guess, he just gave in to the other gods when he's like, all right, you want the Kraken? Fine, we'll do the Kraken. Yeah. But it was never his idea to unleash the Kraken. In the original, it's all Zeus. He's like, we're doing the Kraken to this city of Argos right in the beginning because they killed the woman I loved. And then it's more Thetis, I guess, later that's like, you got to do the Kraken again. Come on. But he's just a very angry dude in the original.
Thetis is really trying to rationalize things with him at the beginning. He's like, hey, look, this guy, Cretius, he builds a lot of temples to the gods. He's always praying and stuff like that. Hey, you're going to let this little baby murder thing slide or not?
And he's not really reasonable. He's like, I don't care about the millions of good things he's done. He did one bad thing, and I'm going to focus on that forever. It's like, damn, man, come on. This guy's not completely terrible, and you're just going to punish him and everybody that lives there because he did one thing that pissed you off. I mean, that's kind of what I like about that Zeus, that he's so petty. It doesn't matter. Like, he's such a child in some ways, which is an interesting take on, like, the king of the gods.
Yeah, I agree. It puts him in a space where he's truly in charge just because he's the toughest. Doesn't make him right. For instance, if that had been Calibus in that scene getting tossed into the sea, he would have let it slide. Yeah. He's like, hey, this guy's pretty nice. He's cool. But it's his son. So, as petty as he is completely self-interested. I guess we can understand a lot of his motivations from that perspective. Not a great dude. Liam Neeson, also not a great dude, but a better dude.
Yeah, I guess not as impulsive and vengeful as the original Zeus. The only thing I didn't understand, maybe you can help me explain this, in the remake, when Zeus finds out that Perseus is his son, his initial reaction is, well, he's never prayed to me. I don't care about him. But then he turns around pretty quickly and wants to help Perseus. They never really explain. I don't know if maybe it was a deleted scene or maybe it was just something I missed. Do you know exactly why he sort of pulled a 180 there and decided to help him?
No, I'm with you. I'm not really sure why there was a turnaround. It makes the rest of it, and this is, I think, the problem that the remake runs into, where I think it's trying to do things to be the remake of the original film that actually doesn't help its own plot. Yeah, Zeus is like, hey, this guy is like spiteful. He doesn't care about me. He's never prayed to me. I don't care about him. That motivation would have sort of made sense throughout the film and actually could have been an interesting foil.
Yeah, because it would have played nicely against the Zeus in the original, who was like all about Perseus, loved Perseus, and now you have the Zeus that hates Perseus. I thought that would have been an interesting dynamic to see the difference from the original, but they didn't go there.
That would have been a cool dynamic. You know what I think would have made that interesting? If they would have had like a Thetis character in that film that's like secretly helping Perseus. You know, I think that may have been like a more interesting way to do that, to have like Zeus being completely manipulated by Hades and have like another god that's like more reasonable, that's trying to help the demigod save the day from everyone.
Yeah, really. That's what I thought Io was, but she's never revealed that she was working with the gods ever. She's just an ageless woman that knows how to fight. So I was a little disappointed that there was never a reveal that she was secretly like a god or like working with the gods.
I agree. It is confusing because I think what makes the first film strong, and we talked about it a little bit, but the fact that there were these like multiple gifts from the gods throughout the film that changed the dynamic. There's really only the sword in this film, and I guess Pegasus, of course. I don't know, it feels flat. Like Zeus isn't really helping him.
Well, don't forget he gave him the coin.
For
the ferryman, which is funny because he said, I don't want anything from the gods. Take this coin. Okay, Dad.
I was thinking the same thing. And it's like, you got these two characters who are like, we're not getting along, you know? And he's like, I don't want anything from the gods. Oh, but I'll take that coin.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, okay, hold on. The motivations and reasoning become muddied.
Yes.
So it gets confusing. I like the Zeus in this film more, mostly because he's Liam Neeson and he's shiny. Even though I do prefer the remake Zeus, it's still, something's off, you know? I can't quite put my finger on it.
Okay, I like the remake Zeus just because, yeah, you're saying it is Liam Neeson, and he is sort of portrayed as a more sympathetic Zeus that loves humanity. But I also like the original's take that he's this pretty petty, selfish, emotional being that's just like, I don't care, I'm gonna do what I want, and he doesn't really play well with others necessarily. This is the king of the gods. He's supposed to be powerful, maybe all knowing, but he's sort of childish. And I thought that was an interesting take, and I appreciated that in the original.
That's a great point, man. He's such a dick.
Yeah.
Which actually does make it more fun. He may not be the better character, but you're right, I think it's a more fun portrayal. It gets us through the scenes in a way that you can have a little bit of entertainment from it, as opposed to being like, this is serious God stuff, which I think actually kind of hurts the remake because it's taking itself so seriously.
Yeah.
And it probably shouldn't.
Yeah, the original just plays against your expectations of what Zeus should be, and I appreciate it for that. While the remake doesn't do it too much. If I had to pick, this is tough. I'm gonna cop out and just say it's kind of a tie. They both did really good things with the Zeus portrayal. I don't know. Maybe I am drawn a little bit more to the originals because it was just my expectations played with a little bit more.
That makes sense. Now this is a wild card, and I probably shouldn't bring this up, but why not? Would you say that Io in the remake is taking up our Boo spot? They're both helpful.
I don't know if I thought she more took up the Andromeda spot.
That's
she
fair.
seemed to be more of the love interest for Perseus in the remake. But like more than just the love interest, some type of guide too.
I would agree with that. That the Andromeda, I guess this is a nice way to talk about the Andromedas. In the original, I mean, she's really portrayed as just eye candy. She's not really there to do much. I guess she does go off with them, right?
She does go on the journey with them, but she doesn't really do anything. She just travels with them, and then they leave her.
Yeah.
And then she goes back to be sacrificed. I think it was just to get a little more screen time with Perseus so you could feel the love between these two characters. Yeah. But ultimately, she doesn't really do anything other than really just looking pretty. But she does even less, I feel, in the remake.
Somehow, right? Like, it's like they wrote her to be more capable and, like, kind of like a true, like, leader. Like, she's more regal, I guess, in the remake, but she's also barely there. Yeah. Towards the end, Percy is like, no, you should be queen. You're in charge. Is she?
Like, we don't know because we barely spent any time with her. We spent more time with the townspeople mad about her than we did actually with her, I feel.
You're 100% right. Like, the kind of, like, religious fanatic dude gets more screen time than Andromeda, which I thought was a strange choice.
Yeah, I don't know what she really does in the remake.
I think she's just there to say that Andromeda's in the film.
Yeah, honestly, just to like be the catalyst of why the gods get mad. Other than that, yeah, she doesn't do anything. Yeah. I mean, I guess you don't need that. That's why I feel like Io filled that role, because you don't give Andromeda to do everything, you don't get her to do anything, so you gave everything to Io. That's what I feel. That she was Andromeda.
Yeah, but even in that scenario, why?
Yeah, it's weird because like
why is he there?
Who's there? Andromeda?
Like in the movie, like at all. Like why was that character?
Which one?
Written? Io. Sorry.
Io. Yeah. Yeah, I don't
She's
know.
Doing things in the movie, and I appreciate it, but like you have Andromeda,
right? They should have just made Andromeda a little bit of a stronger character. Yeah. That would have been good. It's weird too because Io is actually like the great grandmother of Perseus in mythology. But I guess it makes sense she's ageless, so maybe they go into that in the sequel. I don't know.
Sequel.
They should have just kind of said, okay, we'll make Andromeda a stronger female character than she was in the original. That's what you think they would have done in the remake, but instead they just said, let's bring on this other character instead.
Maybe it was sort of their attempt to, not limit Andromeda, I guess maybe historically for some reason, because she, in the original, she's just like the hot chick. That's all she's really there for. In this film, they write her as more authoritarian, like a person with agency and power, but then we just leave her, so we never really get to embrace that side of it. Yeah. I think they could have easily written some bullshit plotline where she goes with them on the journey, and he realizes that, like, hey, this chick's pretty cool, It seemed arbitrary that she wasn't the main love interest.
I guess the only trouble is because you have like this certain amount of days. So it's like, would the people really just let her leave? And like, if she doesn't come back, then the city's going to get destroyed. How do you get her back just in time for her to be sacrificed? Maybe they ran into that problem, but maybe they could have come up with something to.
I guess so. I mean, that's kind of where I fall. Where like, I think Io is a decent enough character. I just didn't see the need to make the split. You know, whatever. Maybe I'm splitting hairs at that point.
No, I
But
get what you're saying. Yeah, because Andromeda was pretty important. I mean, she didn't do much in the original, but she's a huge motive for our hero.
oh yeah,
So she was very important. To cut her role down just to like this almost a cameo in the
yeah,
remake, it was an interesting choice. Yeah, I don't know why they felt they had to introduce Io. I mean, I liked Io. I thought she was
yeah. No,
one of the more interesting characters. That's definitely the most interesting of Perseus and company. Even more interesting than Perseus because he was boring for me. Yeah, I don't know.
that one scene with Io where like she's trying to help him with the Medusa thing is was probably the most interesting sequence that you have with Perseus and another character
Hmm.
because there is some sort of chemistry there, some implied romance. It's even kind of weak at the end that Zeus is like, "You shouldn't be by yourself. Here's that chick we just killed off like 2 scenes ago."
I know. It's like she just died 10 minutes ago, and like here she is again. It's like that was cheap. Come on, man.
It sort of retroactively weakens the character because oh no, I'm just like another one of Zeus's like playthings. Like oh, she's not dead, she's here. Same thing, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's almost like, well, can you bring other people that were dead too, Zeus?
Right.
I mean, why only this person? I don't get it.
Yeah,
That was weird. But we'll talk about the ending more
yeah.
later.
The character talk is really interesting, but I think that another star of both films are the effects. The effects are a huge element of I would say, especially the original. They've aged in both films differently, but it'd be nice to kind of look at like Perseus's journey to, for instance, Medusa and like sort of how we get there from an effect standpoint.
Yeah, so in the original, like I said earlier, it was a Harryhausen effects, did all the stop motion for that, and it was actually the last Harryhausen film. The original is famous for that, and then the remake is just pretty much a typical CGI film. But it was originally released in 3D. I know that, and I know that 3D conversion was expensive and it wasn't necessarily good. I haven't seen it in 3D, but I heard it wasn't particularly good. And the director himself says he didn't like the conversion.
I'm sure he didn't. The scene where like I guess we should get into it. Like when one of the scorpions picks up a guy and like kind of like hoists him towards the front of the screen and then like puts him down. I'm sure that was in horrendous 3D. I found the claymation slightly charming. At times it's not good. I don't know if it was the shit at the time. Like I'm assuming it was.
I read reviews from the time and it said it looked very dated. And like I said, I thought I came from the same time as Jason and the Argonauts, around the 60s, and I was shocked to find that this is an 80s movie. So I think at the time it was still dated.
Interesting. Some of the effects of like Pegasus being like captured and some of these claymation fights, they come off as very hokey, but there's a certain charm to that style that you don't quite get with CGI sometimes.
I thought Medusa looked pretty good in the original.
No, I'll give you that, Dan. I thought the Medusa kicked ass in the original. The green eyes and just like the way it was done. I agree with you. That was pretty cool. Sexy CGI Medusa in the new film didn't quite do it for me.
It wasn't just the effect; it was also the way it was lit too. Like Medusa's lair was very dark and a very good use of lighting in the original, and then it was very bright in the remake. So I guess you could see all the action and just how sexy Medusa is.
Yeah.
I thought she was scarier in the original, just because I think they kind of did the Jaws thing. Like we can't really show her too much because then she'll look silly. So we're gonna show her as little as possible, and then let your imagination kind of take over. And it's a very practical and effective way of making her feeling threatening, and as opposed to the CGI Medusa, which is like, okay, it's a CGI creature. Yeah. Here we go.
Now, it's a small difference, and I'm sure there are technical reasons for it, but the fact that like that Medusa sort of stays more long range, like she's got the bow. Both Medusas do, but like she's primarily using that bow, and you can't get close to her, but you also can't look at her. It was a very cool effect. It made her seem a lot more dangerous to me in the original. The other thing is what, again, such a head scratcher with this remake. The items are coming into play. The gifts of the gods. It's not just some random shield you have. It's your magic shield is the shield that you're using to like see Medusa in the original film. As an audience member, I'm like, huh? Hey, there's that thing that they introduced. He said that you would need it, and here it is. Those types of callbacks are pretty important in movies. And I like that the scene incorporates these elements from earlier parts. They're all part of the quote-unquote hero's journey, and it's important to have that there. Whereas the remake, were you also confused by the robot dude? Is that what he is? A robot dude? The guy from the desert?
Oh, the Jinn guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a little confusing. I mean, he was okay.
Why was he not affected by Medusa? Is it because he's a robot dude?
I thought it was something magic. Because he had magic before, so I thought he was... And he already looked like he was made of stone, too. I don't know.
Yeah, but, there's like more of those guys. See, now I'm starting to think about that type of stuff.
And you shouldn't be.
Maybe a bunch of those guys should have killed Medusa.
True.
It's like there's a bunch of them, and they're dangerous, and they're magical, and they could have stopped the Kraken, it seems. Like, why is demigod magic better or practical than this other seemingly very strong desert magic?
Because it's more sexy, Reggie. That's why.
Damn it, that was Hollywood.
No, I guess one of my issues with that Medusa fight in the remake was he did the same thing. He used the reflection in the shield. But wasn't his shield made out of scorpion shell?
Right.
Did
he pick up a different shield?
He might have. That's what I'm thinking, but I didn't want to rewind to find out.
Yeah, me neither. But see, like that's kind of like my takeaway, that he picked up another guy's shield. But that's shitty too, because why introduce the scorpion shield?
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything in the movie. They're like, oh, it's fucking strong and light.
But he never uses it. He never uses it once. That's right. That's a good point.
Not once.
So it's like, why introduce the scorpion shield? Why bring those two hunters along? No reason. No reason at all.
And your synopsis says that most of the men are killed, which is very true in the original. But I think like every dude that hung out with him died.
Yeah.
In the remake.
I just said most of them because Io was still alive. She didn't go. Right. That's why I didn't say all of them were killed. But yeah, all the men soldiers were killed in the remake.
I know we already talked about it, so I don't want to harp on it too much. But I cannot emphasize just how unheroic Perseus is in the remake, because everybody that dies doesn't have to. Whereas like in the original, the collateral damage feels needed. It's like, hey, these guys are on a journey with me to help me out. Like, I'm doing my best. They're doing their best. And unfortunately, some people died. Like in this one, he's not doing his best. He's not trying his hardest. Like he arbitrarily picks when he wants to be a god or not, and it just, I don't know, man. Like they have that kind of big speech before they go in, and he's like, like he's finally trying to be like a human being in the movie, and they're all talking about like fighting for each other and being friends, and I knew a great man once. He was my father. Well, now I know three. And it's like, and then like immediately those three guys die, like right after that speech.
It's pretty funny because he doesn't use like that god sword that he got from Zeus until Io is killed. So he waits till everybody's dead. Then okay, maybe I should have used the sword. Guys, anybody?
It's just so frustrating. It's frustrating because
he has to prove that the man part can do it. Reggie, don't you understand?
We got that, but then it doesn't.
It doesn't. No, he does have to fall back on the god powers.
He comes flying in on a magic horse. He's got a magic sword, and he's got a head from a magic, god-infused thing. Also, the Medusa story in the remake is very graphic and very fucked up.
Yeah.
Sorry, Had to throw that in there too. I'm sure it's probably in line with the original myth. You can skip that next time because it just again shows that these gods are, which Sam Worthington is trying to, get across throughout the film. But like these gods suck.
Yeah,
they're terrible people. I understand why men don't like them, but then by the end, he's gone full god mode. Like he's like, I'm totally embracing my god powers, and it makes the first half, if not 2/3 of the movie, pointless because he's just been, I'm pushing back, and then I don't care anymore.
Wow, I didn't really see it that way, Reggie. But now that you mention it, yeah, if he had just embraced those god powers, really could have saved probably all their lives.
Yeah, maybe like 4 dudes would have been there at the end.
Totally goes like full god at the end. Even when he like fights Hades, he gets the lightning bolt from Zeus to strike his sword and chucks it at Hades. It's like, yeah, he went full god there. It's just funny because he's trying to prove that man can do it, but ultimately he's not able to do it as a man.
Or at least that's what I got.
No, I definitely got that he was trying to prove that, no, I don't want anything from the gods. I'm going to do this as a man. But then he embraces the god part. Everybody died because he didn't do it sooner. But he didn't learn that lesson that way. I don't know. Wow. You're making me see this in a new light.
Yeah, I mean, not to completely shit on him, but also it hurts the film that he's not embracing his powers because there's nothing cool about him. He's not doing anything cool. I don't care if he's swinging a non-magical sword because there's other guys swinging non-magical swords that seem to be better at it for the most part. They're sending random men out into the woods to chase after him because he goes running off in a huff. And he's like, would you, like, one of the characters says, go get our savior. Like, go get him back because we need that dude. And he's just being such a stubborn asshole. These dudes going after him get killed in the woods immediately. And it's just like all these bad things are happening to everyone around him. And then at the end, he's just like kind of palling around with his dad, throwing around the old God ball.
Did you have a good adventure, son? Yeah, Dad. Maybe a couple of my friends didn't have to die, but whatever. I was back, huh?
It was things like that where, like, the original film is the story is almost non-existent. There's not really much of a reason for things to be happening other than that they are, and that's what heroes do. But at least that's what heroes do. So, like, I enjoyed that journey a lot more than this guy who, like, at a certain point, I'm getting tired of the adventure too. It's like, I don't need this, I don't need that. I was like, yeah, I guess not, dude. Like, why am I watching this? Yeah. I think I dropped the gun. I feel very bad now.
I agree with that. That's the trouble when you have like a brooding hero like that. It's like they don't want to be in this journey adventure. It's like, how do you make the audience want to go on and with them? It's a double-edged sword when you have a hero like that.
Classic Anakin Skywalker, dude.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't really think about it as deep as you did when it comes to personal.
Sorry, bro.
Interesting. I think you said enough.
I think I went too far. You got to tell me, dude. What did you think about Bobo?
Bubo, the mechanical owl. Okay, so Athena has this bird, which is a live bird, but she doesn't want to give it up. But Zeus is like, my son, my word, whatever, you do it. And so she goes to another god to get a mechanical bird made. And he's mostly comic relief. He's been compared a lot to R2-D2. I read somewhere that they sort of made him in order to sort of cash in on that Star Wars, mechanical sidekick for a comedic effect. But he does fuck shit up. He reminded me of like Beat from Mega Man. Like he just this invincible bird just killing everybody in its path. Yeah. I wasn't expecting him to like burn that whole area down. I was like, whoa, don't mess with the bird. I thought it was pretty cool.
When you look at the body count, I think he actually does more heroing than Perseus when it's all said and done.
He killed everybody in Calibus's camp, and he did it with such brevity. He was efficient. Yeah. I don't know if he killed the giant vulture. Probably did. Burned up in that fire. But he was really the hero at the end because he was able to destroy Calibus's camp and free the Pegasus in order to get Perseus back to the city. Yeah. So he was funny, but he was also effective as hell.
Perseus is just slumped in the stadium of Jopa or Jopav or whatever, and he's like, "Dude, I'm beat. That Medusa fight took a lot out of me. Hey, Boobo, go do everything while I take a nap." The chirps and the clicks, goofy. The rationale, because I guess the director or the artist tried to say that technically Boobo was made before R2D2, which is horseshit. We all know that was a stolen concept. Man, was he kicking ass, dude. Like,
it was a fun scene. You didn't expect it. You just think, oh, he's just going to go get Pegasus. That's all he's going to do.
Yeah.
Nope. Not at all. It was good. He was enjoyable. And, you see the cameo of him in the remake. Just a quick little, what is this? Oh, I don't want it. Apparently, Sam Worthington didn't want that bird at all in the movie. He was just like, this is embarrassing. This is going to ruin my movie career if we have it. That's what I read on IMDb.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, it felt like the remake did all of its sort of like real homages in like the opening credits.
Yeah. It ended with the it opened with the ending of the original, right? The constellations and everything.
Yeah. Which I thought it was a nice touch, just other than the fact that they never actually really addressed the original movie at any point after that. It just kind of does its own thing.
I guess the remake was just trying to do more of a serious take. If they had a mechanical bird in there, it might make it more silly than it unintentionally was at moments. Yeah. So I could see not wanting to have the bird there, but I still think there could have been a nice way to just this is stupid. Why do I want this mechanical bird? And then immediately you have that scene in the remake where he just wrecks everybody with everybody's just like, wow, why didn't we use the bird earlier? That would have been really a funny beat. It would have been a cool beat, but they decided to go more gritty and real, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely just have I don't know, the bird doing intel for IO or something like that. There's a way to incorporate it. It's a ridiculous character. I understand that. The bird's ability to just destroy camps of villains was cool. And I personally find the scene where Zeus is like, hey, just give him your bird. Not on my watch. I've never given up my bird. I love that scene more than life itself. It's just such a funny, and probably unintentionally, but it's just such a funny way to handle that situation. That's not my bird, and then they just make this R2D2 ripoff, who is a huge part of the movie, kind of like R2D2.
Yeah. Just going back to that Zeus scene, it's how can I help my son? You give up something important you love. Okay, problem solved.
Yeah, he does just walk away. He's just all right.
He doesn't even check that the bird's there. Zeus has no idea that it's a mechanical bird the whole time.
Yeah. Hey, you know what though? Good on her, because that thing worked.
Well, I think that's another good example of, we said before, Thetis kind of got one over on Zeus before by turning into a shark. Well, here's Athena getting one over on Zeus by going, no, I'm not going to listen to you. So while the gods sort of follow Zeus, they don't follow him down to a T. There is some defiance there, but not enough defiance where they're we need to overthrow this guy. They're just he's not thinking right. I'm going to do it my own way. So I like that, the interaction with the gods. And they're just they're not doing exactly what Zeus wants him to do.
I think that's a great point, because it makes that dynamic so much more interesting. You feel like the other gods have a real place in this universe. There's a bit of it in the remake, but everyone's arbitrarily getting weaker as they go. So the gods aren't really the gods anymore, and the only god that seems to be getting stronger is Hades. The whole dynamic's thrown off. Whereas I like that they're kind of palling around telling stories of turning into things and affecting humans in different ways. There's a fun factor that certainly at times in the movie goes over the top. It gets a little goofy a lot of time. It just feels more cohesive. It is goofy, but it's fun.
I like it because, you think of the gods, you think of almost these perfect beings, right? That are organized and know everything and they have their shit together. But in the original, they're sort of no, we're we're just as kind of dumb as humans sometimes, and we're still trying to figure things out ourselves, and we don't have ultimate plans. We're kind of just winging it sometimes. I thought that was an interesting take, because you think gods, you think, oh, they got their shit together. No, not them. They quarrel a lot, which is important because they should be quarreling. And that's one thing I missed from the remake, because they don't really interact. They have one scene in the beginning where there's a bunch of them. I'm like, oh, this is cool. But then you never see them all together again. It's just Zeus, or sometimes Zeus and Hades. But you never see the gods interact after that.
There were definitely opportunities to maybe have Zeus, because they are kind of in a weakened state, having maybe a few of them try to help him throughout, but because they introduced this element that he doesn't want the gods' help, like there's no real place for them in the film. You also miss like an element like when Zeus secretly helps Perseus at the end of the original, where he's super tired right now and he's got a bird fighting for him, but like I'm just gonna give him a little bit of a push so he can finish the job. Like that type of stuff is it's cool. Like you're seeing these dynamics. Just the film's insistence in the remake to pit him against the gods so much, it just takes a lot of weight away from the experience, because I feel like, again, as the audience, we're not seeing Perseus's like full power, so I feel like we're kind of getting robbed of the experience of seeing a kick-ass like adventure movie because the adventurer doesn't want to be on the journey.
Going back to that moment you said where Zeus helped Perseus without telling the other gods, I thought that was an interesting choice, because the whole time he's sort of been telling the gods what to do, and it's like whatever, it's his way or the highway, whatever he says goes. But he kind of sneaks around behind their backs, which is sort of telling Zeus, it's like, well, he doesn't want to be like a dick all the time, right? He doesn't want them to think that just always his way. He's like, yeah, I'm playing by your rules. So it's like it shows him putting this front up to the other gods that he respects them, when he sort of just goes behind their backs and does his own thing anyway, which is interesting for his character.
With like the Liam Neeson version, I don't know, he just doesn't get the same chances to do that type of stuff. I guess he's cunning in the scenario where he makes Hades king of the underworld, which was basically a trick. But other than that, like, he doesn't really seem that much more capable than anybody else. And I would say actually Hades more or less has the upper hand on him throughout the most interactions. He just happens to be a demigod son that he created years ago that is there to clean up his mess. I think because there's so many elements that there's so many things to talk about in the movies, I guess we should really talk about the big money scene. When they release the Kraken, what's your take on the original Kraken versus the remake Kraken?
Okay, so the original Kraken, we actually see him twice. We see him in the beginning of the movie destroy Argos, and then he's going to destroy the other city at the end. He kind of just looks like a swamp man kind of a creature.
Got that vibe.
Yeah, some like one of those old 50s sci-fi horror creatures that doesn't really look convincing. It just looks like a dude in like a suit, honestly. It doesn't look that good, which is interesting because you think they would have gone a little more, I don't know, just because I think it was sort of claymation too, because they had multiple arms, right? So I don't think it was a dude in a suit, but it just looked like a dude as like a sea creature, as opposed to the remake's Kraken, which was like this huge kind of blob with a lot of tentacles and a giant head, which was okay too. I guess it was more imposing, the multi-tentacled monster of the remake.
Sure.
And it was interesting because he's not supposed to destroy the city if he gets the sacrifice of Andromeda, but that didn't matter to the remake because he just starts destroying things before he's even like up to Andromeda. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna take out that part of the city and that part, and he just kept destroying. And I was confused. I was like, he's already destroying the city. What's the point of sacrificing her if the city's gonna get destroyed anyway? So I was a little confused by his actions, but when design, I would just say the remake one was a little more imposing.
Yeah, I would say so. The scope of it is pretty impressive. they do a pretty good job of that, and then the Kraken bringing along like winged creatures that like are scaring people throughout the city. I think the scene is much more dynamic and shot in an interesting way because of how big the Kraken is and really what they can do with the effects. Um, Original one, yeah, you're right. It feels like an Ultraman episode or something.
And he doesn't really attack the city. You see him attack in the beginning, but he doesn't really attack it. It just sort of floods the city, and it's not
Yeah,
really anything he's doing. It's just all the water that's sort of coming up with him. I don't
yeah,
really recall him actually attacking the city like with his many limbs or like throwing a fireball or whatever the Kraken does.
right.
Um, by the way, the Kraken, not a Greek creature. That's a Norse creature. And the original
Hmm.
story was not a Kraken. It was some giant whale. I forgot the name of it, but it's not Greek.
That's
It,
interesting.
anyway, yeah, he just stands up and floods the city, and then he has to be sort of un uh, released. He has to be released by Poseidon. Hey, can we just talk about Poseidon's
Ooh.
face
Yeah,
when,
let's talk
when the
about
Kraken is
that.
released? I would akin it to when you're driving next, and then you see a senior citizen driving, and they just have their mouth wide open, and they don't look like they have any confidence. That's kind of what
Yeah.
Poseidon looked like when he unleashed the Kraken. Just his mouth wide open, like scared, like, "Ah, there's a Kraken. I don't know what to do." I don't know why they made him do that. It's like
I
just
don't know.
it was so bad. It looked terrible.
Even the effect of him being underwater was so shitty.
It was.
Um,
And then that crank he had to turn, it took me a while to realize, oh, that's supposed to be him turning a crank. I didn't know what I was looking at
yeah,
first few times.
that and the theater scene where like the she gets pissed and like the head comes off the statue and she's talking through the statue. It looked very bad, very bad. I found it to be slightly charming, but mostly because of just how over the top shitty it looked. What do you do? You got the CGI guys, you got the claymation guys. I think there's some elements where claymation won the day, and then there were other elements where CGI was, appropriately like the Kraken. I would say I'm giving the nod to the Kraken in the remake, but I'm giving the nod to Medusa in the original. The Pegasus, I don't know. That's almost a push for me
I
because
think
obviously looks better, but the little claymation dudes trying to like capture the horse, that was actually a lot of fun.
yeah, I guess it depends on what you're looking for. If you want like a serious movie where you're not taken out of it all the time, then watch the remake. If you want like a good time with some good laughs, which aren't necessarily supposed to happen, then definitely watch the original because there's some
Yeah,
moments that'll just make you go, "Wow, it's not
yeah,
good." Like the effect that really that should set you up for how bad the effects are going to be in the original is just the opening credits. They have that bird that's sort of flying through the sky. I think it's one of
yeah.
the gods, but it's so the way it's rendered. I guess it was like just some bad green screen effect. Like you don't see the whole bird. Like its wings are clipped out because it's the effect is just the technology is just not there or something,
Yeah.
and you can barely see it, and you can barely tell it's a bird sometimes, and it doesn't look good at all. But that should
Like,
prepare you for the rest of the movie.
yeah, it should, because like you're looking at some of the green screen, and it's just like some of those backgrounds are just so bad. Like it looks at times very, very terrible. But there's enough there um, that it's worth the ride. It's worth the ride if you can ignore some of that stuff. But yeah, I found myself throughout the film just saying, "Wow," a bunch to just how shitty some of the effects were. But every once in a while, like you mentioned Medusa, I was like, no, this part's actually really really freaking cool. I'm glad that they did it.
Yeah, that part had me like finally like at the edge of my seat when I was watching the
Yeah,
original. I was just like, "Oh man, this doesn't look like the rest of the movie. This looks good."
yeah, yeah,
If we're talking about the effects too, maybe we should talk about the action
yeah. We can talk
a
about
little
that.
bit because that's primarily what the remake is, right? It's an action movie, definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
There's like fights all the time in the remake that weren't really that drawn out in the original. Like just thinking of the Stygian witches, There's just like
Yeah.
this whole fight with them that didn't really exist in the original. I was like, wow, they're making a fight here. And then there was another fight when that Jin guy is trying to heal Perseus. All of a sudden, like, they just break out a fight there for not really any reason in particular. I guess you're supposed to be thinking that he's going to hurt Perseus, but you know he's not going to hurt Perseus.
Right.
You know he's trying to help him, and they're just long drawn out fight. If I had to pick, obviously the choreography is better than the remake. There's no denying that. I guess the only problem is, do you care? How much do you care about these characters and which movie?
You know, I think it's Mads Mikkelsen. I'm not really sure how to say his name. He's going to be in a Kojima game soon. I don't know if you know about Death Stranding. But he's I'm pretty sure he's like the lead kind of like general dude throughout the film. He's great, by the way. Like, he's one of the few reasons why you should be watching the movie at most points throughout it. He does a really good job of making you care about certain action sequences that really aren't that interesting. He's able to put some weight behind it and, talk about honor and stuff like that in a way that, like, the lead character does not make me interested in the fights. And he does a lot of things poorly throughout. Like, there's some scorpions, we're just going to run towards them. And, like, he makes a lot of mistakes that other people pay for, which, is a complaint that I made earlier. Yeah, most of it is pretty pointless, and most of the characters I don't care about. I did like the general, so when he was in danger at any point in a fight, I sort of cared about that, and I think they gave him a decent send-off in the Medusa fight. I don't know, man. Like, it's not really a lot to care about, even though the action was better.
One problem I have with the remake is that it's so action-heavy. It's kind of rote, the way it's by the numbers. There's not really anything you hadn't seen before, because it's 2010. You've seen plenty of CGI battles. It's not the actors really doing it. It's just some CGI rendering of them. I guess it's hard to really get into it. For me, definitely. When it comes down to CGI battles, I kind of zone out unless there's a lot of weight into it, or like I care about the characters a lot. If I don't have that, I'm gonna and there's nothing that interesting, I'm just gonna check out. So while the action is technically better in the remake, it doesn't mean it was more interesting for me.
Yeah. I think that another problem that I had was the passage of time. Like, it was hard to say. Like, there'd be scenes where, like, it'll take us 2 days time to get here or there, and like I didn't know. Like, I personally checked out of when they needed to be back. I think it was like a 7-day thing, and I had no idea how long they'd been gone or when they started or when it ended. Like, it just, like, the eclipse was the signal that it was time to come back, which maybe I missed that. Like, I didn't realize that we were supposed to care about that.
I don't think they mentioned that. I don't think that it matters, like, how many days either. It could have been 100, it could have been 1,000 days. I don't think the number of days matters. I think you just needed to know that it was sort of time sensitive at that point.
Yeah. So, like, because it was time sensitive, and I think they had a shorter timeline from what I remember.
Yeah, it was 10 days in the remake as opposed to 30 in the original.
Yeah. It makes parts of the journey feel like, hey, do you have time to go somewhere for 2 days? Like, it's a 2-day journey somewhere. Like, when you think about going there and coming back, that's like most of the time you have. It's not something that I generally think about during movies, but for some reason, the way that they were going from action scene to action scene, I couldn't tell how much time was passing, so it made me actually check out of, like, the fact that there was a time constraint. I felt that in the original, the action is wonky, and there's not a ton of character development.
There's no character development for anybody except for Perseus, I guess Andromeda, Ammon, the writer, Burgess Meredith, we didn't even talk about his character. And then there's one guard, Thallo, sort of talks a lot. But there's more...
Like,
what's that?
I like Thallo.
Yeah, Thallo was upset when he got killed. So I'll give it to the remake that they at least let you know the soldiers a little bit more. They didn't really go into great details of who they were or really let their characters develop, but at least you kind of recognize them. And I guess because, you know, it's 2010, I recognized most of the actors. So I was able to like, oh yeah, that's Beast from the X-Men. Oh yeah, that guy's in Game of Thrones. Yeah. So there's a little more character development for the company and the remake.
Even with that character development, like,
Yeah, it wasn't enough to make me invested in the action sequences. Like, oh, I hope that character doesn't die, because they were all expendable, you know. No, yeah. You didn't really care. You know, Perseus was going to make it through it, but if these guys died, it wasn't. I didn't feel anything because we didn't spend that much time with these characters. We spent enough where I was able to distinguish them from one another, but not enough to make me care about them, actually. I
think it's a double-edged sword for that film, because there is character development happening, and you know, it's clear that they want us to invest at least somewhat in some of these characters. But you know, the one line in the movie where he says like, "Your pride is getting my men killed." It actually was like, yeah, dude, like that's what's happening, and it immediately like turned me off to the Perseus character, who never really got interesting for me in that film. Unfortunately, it just made all their deaths make me like the main character less because of how arbitrary they were, while still trying to build them out as like important somewhat. Whereas like in the original, you know, they're not important. But I actually cared a little bit more when people were dying, because it sort of brought back the danger to Perseus, who at this point you actually kind of care about. So like by killing other characters, even though you haven't introduced them, it shows you how dangerous Perseus' situation is. And because you do care about this version of him, there's more weight to those deaths. Not really for the character dying, but for the main character.
Yeah.
I think it was lost a little bit in the remake.
Oh, yeah. That, I get exactly what you're saying. I think you said it well, sir.
Thanks, man.
Let's talk about one thing. We got nudity in the original and not in the remake.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Which is funny, because what do you think the original's rated?
Let's see. It's hard to say. Like, I guess, well, if there's nudity, then I'd have to assume that it would at least have been some sort of PG-13 rating or something like that.
I don't even think PG-13 was available at that time.
Wow, so...
Yeah. But it was rated PG.
Oh, parental guidance.
Yeah. So we have a little bit of nudity there, and then the remake was PG-13. And just, I guess, for the violence.
Yeah, I guess so. That is interesting. I guess a lot of films didn't have like those different definitions of what was for kids and what wasn't at the time. So that's an interesting element.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that the movie was rated PG and then there was nudity, and there was like, whoa. I expected it to be at least 13, but I guess I didn't realize they didn't make the PG-13 until later. And what they can get away with in PG back in the day, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you know, that remake probably could have used some of that, you know what I mean? Yeah, drum up some interest. Maybe people were expecting.
Okay, I do have one problem with the original that I think the remake actually did a little bit better. There's a lot of exposition through dialogue in the original. There's a couple scenes I could think of. There's the one scene among the gods when they're talking about sort of about Calibus and his whole story. They're just explaining it, or explaining Perseus and his origins among each other. And it's just a lot of talking about stuff. But right. I think the worst offender is when Perseus arrives at the city, and then a random guard, which I believe is Thallo, sees, hey, you're a stranger, which is like, wow, how do you know he's a stranger? There's like hundreds of people here. I don't know how you know everybody. But then he explains to this stranger, in extreme detail, the circumstances of men who are trying to marry Andromeda, and like the riddles and what happened to her ex-fiance. It's like, this guy just unloads on this stranger that he just met. I couldn't believe it. I was like, he's giving a lot of information. I just felt like I was watching like Wayne's World, like, wow, that was an awful lot of information. I hope it comes into play later. You know? It was it's pretty laughable how they did that. And they didn't do that too much in the remake. I think they sort of did it when they were explaining how Zeus was Perseus's father, but they at least showed it, so it wasn't that bad. But
Right.
the original was just a lot of exposition and dialogue, and I was glad to see that the remake didn't follow when it came to that.
Yeah, the remake had a lot of the exposition up front. They did the opening screen crawl with an explanation, and it had a lot of nice callbacks to the first film. And after that, the movie just kind of gets to do its own thing. There's some dialogue, intense scenes, just kind of the way it's written, but it's not. Here's what's happening right now, kind of like what you described.
Just in case you're not caught up, everybody watching, it honestly felt like that. Like they were just taking you out of the movie for a minute, and like, I hope you're caught up because here's what's happening.
Yeah.
It's just a little, and it's weird too because this was made in 1981. They knew how to do that without having to explain it to you like that.
Also, that riddle was way too long.
I tried to solve it. I was like, okay, a ring, two rings, what? I'm lost.
Yeah. Yeah, that one to me, because I was in the same boat. I was like, all right, here comes a cool movie riddle. And then it's just this long diatribe. And I'm just like, I don't care what the answer is. But again, that scene was another good example of this kind of like strong-jawed Perseus that we get in the first film, which was like, I know the thing, and he throws the hand down, and he's like, I'm the best. I could use some of that from Sam. I could use some of that from Mr. Worthington. He just doesn't want to be the hero of his own film, and I'll take a lunkhead that goes around chopping people's arms off and dubiously solving riddles. Like I'll take that all day.
Okay, and this is really kind of backtracking, but just to rip on Sam Worthington a little bit more.
Let's do it.
They sort of show him like as a little boy. What'd you say? Maybe 8 years old, 10 tops.
Something like that, yeah.
And then they show it like 12 years later, and then it's Sam Worthington. Clearly not 12 years later for him. Definitely like in his 30s or something. It was just like, we couldn't just mess with that number a little bit more to make it a little more believable. Yeah. I just thought that was, for me, that was a funny moment. Like, this is not 12 years later.
Yeah. That's true. Like, like that passage of time was ridiculous. Yeah. God, it's so hard to get behind that Perseus. Like I said, yelling up at the gods. I think they want us to laugh where they keep calling him a fisherman, but it falls a little flat for me. Like
I laughed at one moment in the remake when they're about to fight Medusa, and the one guy he gets his arrow in the quiver, and then he's about to shoot, and then he sees right next to him is a frozen guy in stone with also doing the same pose as him, and he goes, "Oh, that's encouraging." I was laughing at that one beat.
That was pretty funny. One that like totally missed for me because it just was so out of like nowhere and kind of out of character was along the same lines. Sam's giving the motivational speech, and he's like, "Oh, don't look the bitch in the eyes." And it's just like that didn't make a lot of sense.
He's cool, don't you get it? It's cool, Perseus.
Just strange, I get the whole adopted parents angle for him, and like that's a big motivator. I don't personally like it. They spend so much time talking about what his dad did as a profession and the fishing thing, and it's not like it really comes back other than another throwaway scene where he brings back fish for like the camp. It's just like at some point we gotta like move on from this and get to like heroing. I think that the little elements like that, unnecessary callbacks, hurt the remake.
I think they showed that family to sort of make you care about them. So when they die, that you feel the same way that Perseus does. The problem is you don't like you said you spend some time with them. That's unnecessary. You do, but like you don't really get to. You don't get that they're like important in his life. Like, You don't get that feeling when you are spending time with them. Because he, again, going back to when he was like 12, he has that weird scene when he's like with his dad, and he's like, I'm gonna have a new sibling now, and he's acting really weird.
Yeah,
and it was kind of creepy, and it seemed like he sort of hated his life. Is the impression I got at a young age. So I sort of. When they jumped 12 years later, I just assumed that he still kind of hated his life. So I didn't. That sort of distanced the importance of his family to him. So when they died, I didn't really feel the impact that I guess I was supposed to feel. I wasn't shouting at the heavens like our Perseus was. And
Right.
I think if they had developed them a little bit more and shown like how important they were to him, and maybe
Yeah.
even shown him some skills that he could have used, like you
Right.
said, in the actual journey, then it would have made it a lot more impactful. But since
Yeah, you
we're only spending some time with them, seeing them fish, and it's not really. I don't get the love. I don't feel the love, man. I got to feel
yeah,
the
man.
love if you want to make me feel something when they die. You know?
Like it's a trope, but like there should be the scene where the father's showing them how to hold a sword or something like that, or showing them a cool move like that comes back later, making him a fisherman, and then like the movie's not about fishing, so it doesn't really matter.
In the original story, he was founded by a fisherman, which is maybe why
Mhm.
they did it. I'm not saying that justifies it, because they did take liberties elsewhere, which they probably should have with the fisherman. Maybe he was. That's what I was thinking too. He should have been raised by maybe a knight. That might have
Yeah,
been a little cooler. But yeah, just because in the original mythology he was raised by fishermen, I think is
yeah.
why.
I could even see something, yeah, like a former fighter who like for some reason maybe like again now I'm just writing shit.
Now we're just writing a better movie. Okay, go
Yeah.
on.
I don't know, like maybe he gets in a relationship, but like knights aren't supposed to, and he's banished, and now he's a fisherman, but he has like a past as a fighter, maybe something like that. Or if you're gonna go the route where he's a fisherman, we got to spend more time with him to feel like we care as an audience. Because you're right, I don't know how he feels about him, based on like you were saying that scene where it seems like he doesn't really like the guy that much either. It's funny because like the random poet in the original film who like I don't even feel like really has that much of a connection to Perseus, but like I would care more if that guy died than like the dad figure in the remake.
Yeah, I
So
wholeheartedly agree with you because he did help Perseus a lot. I guess
yeah,
we never saw the original or the adopted father just helping out Perseus or just be important. Like the Ammon character in the original, yeah, he was very important because Perseus was just this stranger in a strange land and he needed help, and this old man, Burgess Meredith, was just kind enough to help him.
yeah,
So yeah, I would care if he died. Oh, I'm getting upset just thinking about it now.
I know. I don't know. I think we broke it down pretty well. Like I feel like for a movie that is more character driven, remake sort of failed to make us care about the characters. I don't know. Like I think that what the original does well is it really like leans into the hero's journey trope, whereas the remake is doing the same thing, but like sort of like kicking and screaming all the way through it. Like it seems like nobody wants to be the hero of this hero movie, and it kind of throws things off for me.
Yeah, I fully understand that.
Can I also say that like I know I said this before, but I'm going to reiterate it. I for some reason thought that this was the movie The Immortals, which isn't a good movie either, but like I like it more because there's all like lightning and action and superpowers, and like I was just bummed that there wasn't.
All right, so we said a lot about these movies. There's a lot of things that are different. A lot of things worked. Some things didn't work. Reggie, should this remake exist?
In my opinion, the way it was filmed, no. And honestly, unfortunately, I think a lot of it falls on the shoulders of our lead actor, Sam Worthington. He just never convinced me and didn't allow me to get into the film the way I think I may have with another actor in his place. And apparently they did this twice because they did Wrath of the Titans after this as well. So somebody liked it, but I personally didn't. I didn't think that the remake had to be made in this way, mostly because there's like 100 movies just like this.
So when I was watching the original, I was asking myself the question, what does the remake really need to do to fix this? Because I'm not really a big fan of the original. I definitely had issues with it. My main issue, though, was Perseus. I just thought, like I said before, he's a little pompous, bit of an ass. And so I thought, you got to make me care a little bit more about him in order to justify this remake. Because I know that it's going to look better, it's It's going to have better action and everything. But can you make me care more? That was my important. That's what I was looking for. And ultimately, the answer is no. They didn't make me care. They gave us a potential backstory about his family who died in front of him, which should have made me feel something. But like I said before, they didn't show me any love. They didn't show me any connection that he really had to that family. So I didn't really care there. And then his motivation got changed from something noble like love, as weak as it was shown in the original. It was still a motivation I could follow, to revenge, which isn't a very heroic trait. So, so I'm following this guy just on this revenge quest, and I'm just kind of zoning out because we are doing CG fights, and like I said, if there's no weight to it, if I don't care about the characters, then I'm not really gonna pay attention. So even though it kind of looks better and the action's better, it still falls it still just comes across as bland, and they didn't really do anything new. And what they did try just made me care about the characters less. This revenge motivation that Perseus has, it kind of makes the ending unnecessary. He doesn't need to go back to that city to save the people from the Kraken. He has no ties to that city. He doesn't have any ties to Andromeda. There's no reason that he really needs to save them, except that's what the original did. So for me, that's going to be a no. They didn't need to make it. Not like this. I didn't like Hades. I didn't like the action, and I didn't like Sam Worthington as Perseus.
No, totally agreed. And I mean, the sad thing about all that too is that because Clash of Titans is, at this point a classic film, and like you said, it has its problems, and by no means is it a perfect film. It's just a little jarring that this remake missed the mark so much when there were so many movies like this coming out at that time that I think handled that subject matter in a more interesting, fun way. Like you have movies like Troy, you have movies like 300, or The Immortals, which for some reason I thought we were watching. I don't know. I keep talking about that.
I think I know what you want to watch later.
Yeah. But you could just watch one of those, and pretend it's Clash of Titans, because you might as well. What's the difference at this point? Because this film barely plays back into the plot of the first film anyway. So just go watch a more interesting sword and sandals epic. There's plenty.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, this genre, like you said, had been sort of re-explored in the 2000s, and when not only are you competing with the original, you're competing with them, and you don't bring anything new to the table. You really make your film unnecessary.
I mean, it truly does make it feel like a kind of a cash in.
Yeah.
You're like, these films are doing well now. We've got the source material. Cha-ching, boys, let's film one, and it missed the mark, pretty bad.
Well, that's it. We did another one.
Yeah, that's one more in the books.
Oh, I wanted to say this before, too. Do you know the goddess Thetis? Do you know who her son really is in ancient Greek mythology?
No, actually.
Achilles.
Really?
Yeah. So that could have been cool, seeing Achilles here.
Yeah, that's like... That's how I felt about the film. It was like, it would have been cool if they did something else.
If I wasn't watching this, it would have been cool. No, it was pretty. Like I said, it was wrote by the numbers. Didn't really do anything new. It just because you put a nice polish on the original and changed a couple things here doesn't mean it was necessary.
They can't all be winners, Dan, and this one certainly wasn't.
No, it was not. What do we want to do next?
Yeah, what are we going to cleanse our palate with?
Okay. Well, I had an idea. We did this kind of mystical movie here, and I was thinking maybe we could do a science movie, kind of go in the opposite direction.
Nice.
I was thinking maybe Solaris.
I actually like that Solaris idea.
Yeah, we go sci-fi, a little different.
Given sort of some of the films that we've gone through, I think going the sci-fi route is good because we haven't really done that. I mean, Total Recall falls in that category, but there's a lot of action to it. No, I think it'd be interesting to sort of get away from these sort of films about the past and maybe think about something more sci-fi. I think that's a good idea.
Cool. Solaris it is.
Nice.
All right. All right, well, everybody, thanks for listening. Feel free to give us any feedback. I'm Dan Bulick. You can find me on Twitter at Console Wars Guys, or just look up my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Console Wars, and, say what's up or give us some feedback.
I'm Reggie Parker. You can find me at RP Comedy on Twitter and Instagram, or check out my website, rpcomedy.com.
And thanks for listening to another episode of
Retro versus Remake.